Reinventing education is a wicked problem. But what does that really mean? A wicked problem is one that really doesn't have a solution, but more of a trial and error process. It's also something that has many facets, many different pressure points. For instance, in education, we have policymakers at several levels of government. We have textbook companies providing what they think is the material educators need. At the local level, there are parents who offer their opinions, and there are local administrators who are writing curriculum and telling teachers what they should be doing. In essence, there's many groups coming from many directions to provide a course of action for a wicked problem such as this. And well, it's really not working. When tackling a wicked problem such as this, stakeholders need to share understanding about the problem and share commitment to possible solutions. Shared understanding means the stakeholders, they need to understand each other's position in order to have an intelligent dialogue about the different interpretations and to exercise collective intelligence about how to solve it. When U.S. education began, the teacher was the only one that provided the content, and everyone learned it. They learned to read, they learned to do basic math, they used chalk and slates, they had few books. As time moved forward, teachers still were subject matter experts, but the tools in which they were using were becoming more plentiful. In 1890, the chalkboard entered the classroom. This was believed to be one of the biggest inventions in terms of technology, along with the pencil. In 1925, the film projector entered the classroom, followed by the radio. Another great invention was the overhead projector, still used today. How about the mimeograph machine? I can still feel the dampness and smell. In 1958, educational TV burst on the scene. Remember instructional television? That was going to change and revolutionize education. Shows like Sesame Street, Dora the Explorer, Mythbusters Now, they all have a lot of educational content, but they're a passive way of gathering and sharing information. In 1980, however, computers were introduced into the classroom. In 92% of secondary and 85% of elementary schools had at least one computer. But the one tool that I feel changed the delivery of education was the internet. By the year 2000, there was one computer for every 7 kids, and that computer had internet access. In less than 15 years, access to computers and technology grew exponentially. But it grew so fast, no one really knew how to harness it or how to use the power that it was providing us. Teachers were still the driving force in the classroom. Teachers were still directing the learning, and students were passively taking in the instruction. Keeping in mind that changes in technology and the tools that became available along the way, one might expect the classroom to look differently, but does it? Students are still being told what to learn and how to learn. Teachers are still in charge of the delivery of information and how they want to deliver it. The cafeteria schedule and the bus schedule still run the school day, and instruction is still delivered in isolated blocks of time. U.S. education has not made any significant restructuring, even though the workforce needs have changed dramatically. The workforce looks significantly different than the last 50 years, and technology advancements have caused that. Assembly lines, they don't need many people, just one to press the button. Cashiers at the grocery store are disappearing. You can scan and pay by yourself. But when you look into a U.S. school, for the most part, you see rows of desks with an adult in the front of the room delivering the instruction, and the students sitting at their desks filling out worksheets. Why no change? Because this is a wicked problem. Solutions are hard to implement when there are so many social forces resistant to change or wanting the solution to be theirs. It's going to take a total restructuring to change the U.S. educational system. Jobs might be lost, new jobs might be invented. Companies that have long supported the school system might be on their way out. Other companies, sad to say, are making money by selling materials on how to be successful on the state-level assessment tests. This brings me to my point. Can we really change education by adding something and taking something else away? Or do we need to restructure, redesign what we do? I say we need to think differently. We need to rethink the fundamental educational principles. How do you identify school success? How would you describe an educated person? What does a successful person need to be able to do in the real world? I think we can all agree that every person should be able to read, write, complete basic math facts. Machines that we carry in our pockets, they can do all the factual information. With that being said, in order to address the questions above, people need to be able to problem solve, develop critical and creative thinking. People need to learn how to learn, not necessarily what to learn. They need to develop a love for learning. When little kids start kindergarten, they come ready to tackle the world. They have no fear of failure, and they're willing to do just about anything the teacher puts in front of them. They're curious. They take the knowledge they have, and they try to solve problems with it. But as they move through the system, this passion for learning diminishes. We need to find a way to nourish that creativity. We need to foster the environments where students think they can solve all the problems, local and global. When people have a passion to learn something or want to try something new, they approach learning very differently than how school is structured. For example, little kids mimic others when they try to learn new skills. They watch intently to be able to master the dance moves or draw like an artist. When new technology arrives, kids start pushing buttons. They just start making things happen. They figure out how to use it. They save the directions for last. School structure typically has step-by-step directions for everything. My proposed project comes in two stages, one for teachers and one for students. I propose for teachers the need to go back to kindergarten and experience learning with no fear. Do not think about time constraint requirements or the daily requirements for curriculum mastery. Just take a step backwards and commit to becoming a facilitator of knowledge. I want teachers to embrace the possibilities of change rather than work with the constraints of the system. I want teachers to commit on actively working on creating a personal learning environment. I want them to connect to strangers, leaders in education, people who can support their ideas and passions. I want them to have a virtual presence where they share information and receive information. I want them to be followed and to follow. I want them to become digital citizens, and then and only then will they be comfortable to challenge and educate their students. They will experience who can teach, and soon realize it takes more than one person to sort through all of the information of today and tomorrow. In the second stage, students need to relearn school. Think about it. By the time kids get to middle school, they know how to do school. They show up, watch the teacher give the information. A few days later, they give it back in a test or some other format. Schools are very structured, and students, they've learned the structure. Ask a student to think to solve a problem, and their real work begins. The whining, the many, many questions. And the best question, what do I have to do to get an A? I think that's why there's so many students that struggle with math word problems. If you give them the problem to solve, the computation can be done. But if you ask them to figure out the problem, they struggle to get past that first step. We have not been requiring the students to think or problem solve. There are many reasons for that, but in my opinion, the biggest one is the state assessment test. We teach factual knowledge to pass the test, and we have not spent the time needed for application of knowledge. I propose that students take charge of their learning. This is something that needs to start when the child enters kindergarten. We need to ask the students, what do they want to learn, and how are they going to do it? What tools will they use to assess their own learning? How will they demonstrate their learning? Who will it be shared with? This is an entirely different scenario than showing up to school and being spoon-fed information someone else thinks they need. Remember, we are driven by passion and desire to know something. Young people are no different. I propose that those students, they make their own map for learning. Of course it requires adult interaction, but what if you ask a kid what they want to learn, and the more interested they are, you can call in the experts, the ones who can guide and the ones who can teach. This is how you can create learning for what the child is ready for. So I ask you, can you teach? Thank you.